I was just taking a quick look at this new River 3 Plus. So the Plus means that it's going to be expandable. Now, the extra batteries, apparently they're not available yet. And there's going to be two of them as well. This one here is actually the small one. So when they say up to 858 watt hours, that's with the larger extra battery. This combination here will give you somewhere around 600 watt hours. And then just kind of a thing to note here real quick is that, Ecoflow debuted this product a few months ago. We took a look at it, on this channel. And I'm very happy to report that this thing does get the same screen, the same quality screen as the new Delta 3 models. The prototype that they showed off a few months ago had this like real cheap, dim version of that screen. It had kind of the same graphics, but it looked horrible. So this one does have the bright, full brightness, full contrast, and a nice white color to it as well. So now everything else here is as promised. All the specs here, this is a very impressive little machine. I mean, this thing is 10 pounds, and it's got all the newest tech. Stuff you're not going to find even in Jackeries, Bluettis, the other top models. You're not going to find some of this stuff. And this thing is cheap too, especially, for this pre-Christmas sale. So let's kind of go through, what you get. Kind of one of the biggest standout features right here is this less than 10 millisecond pro grade UPS. This thing actually has a data communication cable that you can hook up to your computer as well. So it's not just the fast switchover, is that it can be in communication with the computer as well. And then of course, what else do we get? Yeah, we get this new whisper quiet technology. All the older power stations, what did the companies do? They basically found the cheapest cooling fans they could find and throw them in there, right? They didn't care how loud they were. So no, this new Ecoflow, like a lot of the other new Ecoflow models, they've actually really focused on trying to keep this thing quiet because they know people are annoyed by those loud fans, aren't they? And then this waterproof battery pack, yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more because it's just the battery pack, it's not the whole product. So now let's go through all of these features a little bit more in depth here. As I mentioned, this less than 10 milliseconds pro-grade UPS that you can communicate with the computer as well. Another, unique feature here is there's actually rear AC outlets. So you don't have to, they show it in this picture actually having one out the front. But if you want like a real clean, if you want to have a clean setup on your desk or something, you don't want to see cables. Yeah, there's actually two more AC outlets on the rear. So very nice. And of course they say that you have the UPS status, all the info you need to know about the UPS mode is going to be on the screen as well. And then for this increased efficiency, this X-GaN power is what Ecoflow is calling it. GaN. What is that? Gallium nitride. It's a new material basically for the electronic components inside this thing, which allows it to be much more efficient than the older models, the standard, silicon-based models. So now one thing to note with this is, this is kind of the same advertisement they have on the River 3 that's not the Plus model, the smaller version. Guess what? This thing, it's not going to be quite as efficient as that other model because this thing actually has a larger inverter for one, 600 watts. Whereas the regular River 3 has a 300 watt inverter, right? So anytime you have a larger inverter, you're going to have basically more idle consumption, more inverter loss. So that's just one thing to note. If you really do want to run like a little 3-watt lamp, this thing is still not going to be super efficient. It's going to be more efficient than a regular 600 watt inverter, but you kind of still want to use a smaller inverter if you want to do something like that. And now here's something that you'll probably be really excited to see. Yeah, as I mentioned, this Plus name means you can expand this unit. And very cool because you can have a very small, portable, lightweight 10-pound unit if you want to go, out camping on an adventure. But if you want to use this thing at home, more for like emergency power at home, then you can connect an extra battery, and it's obviously going to be much larger. But who cares? It's just sitting at home. And what's really cool about this product is this pogo pin technology. You can see it actually right here. So what does this do? I mean, basically, as you see, you just stack these things on top of each other and they connect. There's no cables. You don't have to connect a cable here and then over here. you know what I mean, and have to deal with the cable sticking out. No, it's just seamless. It just becomes one unit basically. And as I mentioned, there's actually two different battery options here. So, you know, you can get up to 572 watt hours with the little battery. That was the one we showed earlier. In this image, they are actually showing the larger battery. So yeah, 858 watt hours, pretty good, you know, because the battery is almost 600 watt hours. And as you can see, the larger battery is basically the exact same size as the River 3 Plus itself, isn't it? Whereas the other battery is much smaller. And one thing to note is these extra batteries do have actually 140 watt USB-C built into them. That's the only, you know, input-output port there is. But still, it's better than nothing. You know, it's better than some of the older Ecoflow extra batteries that literally had nothing. You know, 600 watt continuous AC output. And of course, this being an Ecoflow product, you know, it does have X boost. You know, what is this? It's the voltage dropping technology. So you can power, you know, larger appliances that use more power, more than 600 watts, if they're a resistive load. You know, so basically if they're just converting the electricity in your power station to heat. You know, kettles, toasters, you know, hot plates, stuff like that. They showed this coffee maker, maybe, you know, maybe that would work as well. But you got to be careful, you know, because some appliances are very voltage sensitive and you could damage them. So this is, you know, it's useful if you know how to use it and you use it with the right appliance. If you don't know what you're doing, just don't use it. Don't exceed 600 watts, basically. And this Whisper Quiet technology, X Quiet, yeah, I mean, this is something, this has been like probably one of the most requested upgrades to these power stations, isn't it? Because people, they're annoyed by those loud fans. You know, so 30 decibels, you would hardly hear that, especially if there's like any other kind of background noise, right? So that's very quiet. And of course, if you're interested in this River series, it's because, yeah, it's compact and lightweight, isn't it? So yeah, as I mentioned, 10 pounds, short, flat top. You can stack stuff on top of it. Now it is kind of deep, you know, it is kind of deep, but still, you know, you're going to be able to tuck this thing away, aren't you? And for the extra batteries, as I mentioned, you know, the small extra battery is about half this size. They don't have the extra batteries available yet, but if we can take an educated guess, it'd probably be about 7 pounds for the smaller extra battery and about 14 pounds for the larger extra battery. So, yeah, you just do the math, you know, it'd be 17 pounds all in with the small extra battery, about 24 pounds with the larger extra battery. So still very compact, you know, especially when you're talking about up to 858 watt hours. And now this is interesting here. This, you know, this is something Ecoflow just started doing where they're encasing the batteries in a waterproof pack. So that's, you know, the batteries are inside and then they're inside another kind of sealed container in the power station. So, yeah, one thing you want to note is the power station itself is not waterproof. You know, there's obviously the cooling vents here. If water gets in there, the power station will get damaged and it'll probably stop working. But what's nice about this is the batteries will stay safe. You know, the batteries aren't going to short circuit or anything like that, so you're not going to have like a fire risk afterwards. And then, of course, yeah, you know, this thing has the Ecoflow app, which is one of the best apps on the market as far as your ability to customize different settings. And, you know, kind of a nice thing is it is Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. And then for the charging here, 380 watts, you know, straight from the wall, no power brick. And this is actually faster than a 1C rate, isn't it? Because this is only 288 watt hours. So they say they can do this because it's vehicle grade LFP cells. And, you know, vehicle grade cells can often handle 2 or 3C rates. So, yeah, this is a little over 1C rate. And then, of course, this trickle charge technology they're talking about, basically it'll slow the charge down as it gets closer to 100%. And then if you want to do solar with this thing, it's actually better than the River 2. So if you're familiar with the River 2 models, you know that in order to get this 220 watt solar input, you had to go for either the Max or Pro models here. Whereas this thing is actually, you know, it's close in size to the regular River 2, the base model, the small one, isn't it? And yet you can still do this 220 watt input. And they've increased the voltage a little bit. So yeah, 220 watts max inputs up to 55 volts now. So the River 2 was 50 volts. So yeah, very good to be able to put that much solar into a 288 watt hour battery. It's perfect. And then if you do expand this thing, it's basically going to be very similar to those Max and Pro models, right? But you don't have to expand it. That's the great thing.